Imagine waiting years to find out that you're free. Imagine the courage it took, not just to survive, to fight, speak out, and lead.
Juneteenth isn't just about a moment in time, it's about people known and people unknown. And these people made freedom real. Today we honor their names, their courage, and their legacy.
I'm Naty.
I'm Veda.
And we are here to thrive.
This is Thrive by the Rising Muse, where we talk healing, resilience, and mental health, especially through the lens of culture, history, and identity.
Today's episode is one very dear to our hearts. We're diving into the real story behind Juneteenth, but through the eyes of the heroes who made this freedom possible. Some are household names, some history almost forgot, but not on our watch.
So, June 19th, 1865, Union General Gordon Granger arrives in Galveston, Texas, and announces that the enslaved are free.
Mm-hmm.
This is 2.5 years after President Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation.
Let that sink in. 2.5 years. People were still enslaved, still suffering, still in the dark, and then freedom came, but not without scars, trauma, and confusion.
That's why Juneteenth matters. Not just because slavery ended, but because it was fought for. Delayed justice is still justice, but it comes at a cost.
Today we're going to talk about some of those heroes of Juneteenth. So let's start with Frederick Douglass. He didn't just write history, he rewrote the narrative. He was born into slavery, he was self-taught and selfless and fearless. He spoke truth to power. He met with presidents, debated races, and published some of the most powerful abolitionist work ever written.
Then there's Gordon, also known as Whipped Peter. His image, his back covered in brutal scars, shook the conscience of the country. He escaped slavery and joined the Union Army. His body became undeniable evidence that horror exists.
I'm wondering if that bust that we saw at the Apex Museum with that back,
yes,
it was of Gordon.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm almost sure.
Yep.
And we also have to name Major General Gordon Granger. No, he wasn't black, but he showed up with that order in Galveston. His words, General Order Number 3, made Juneteenth what it is. The people are informed that in accordance with a proclamation from the executive of the United States, all slaves are free. This involves an absolute equality of personal rights and rights of property before former masters and slaves. The connection heretofore existing between them, between employer and hire labor. The freed are advised to remain in their present homes and work for wages. They are informed that they will not be allowed to collect at military posts, and they will not be supported in idleness either or elsewhere. It's reminder that all allyship matters too when it's in action. And not only he was an ally, and he was not just fulfilling an order. He wanted to deliver that news. He suffered opposition from other whites. He actually had to step down from his general military rank for safety reasons.
Let's be real.
Mm-hmm.
Black women are the backbone of this movement, and they still are.
They still
today.
Are. Oh, yeah.
Let's talk Harriet Tubman.
Mm-hmm.
Harriet Tubman escaped slavery, but she went back again and again. She didn't just talk freedom, she delivered.
Mm-hmm.
And Sojourner Truth, a force of nature. She demanded the mic, even when no one wanted her to have it. Her words, "Ain't I a woman?" still punch through time like lightning. Women's Rights Convention old stone church. Since it's been demolished. That was in Akron, Ohio. Well, children, where there is so much racket, there must be something out of kilter. I think that twixt the Negroes of the South and the woman at the North, all taking about rights, the white man will be in a fix pretty soon. But what's all this here talking about? That man over there says that women need to be helped in carriages and lifted over ditches and to have the best place everywhere. Nobody ever helps me in carriages or over mud puddles or gives me the best place. And ain't I a woman? Mm-hmm. Look at me. Look at my arm. I have plowed and planted and gathered in the barns, and no man could head me. And ain't I a woman? I could work as much and eat as much as a man when I could get it, and bear the lashes too, as well. And ain't I a woman? Mm-hmm. I have borne 13 children and seen most all sold off to slavery. And when I cried out with my mother's grief, but Jesus hurt me. And ain't I a woman? Mm-hmm. Then they talk about this thing in the head. What's this they call? Member of audience
intellect. They were whispering.
That's it, honey. Mm-hmm. That's it right there. What's that got to do with women's rights or Negroes' rights? If my cup won't hold but a pint, and yours hold a quart, would you be mean not to let me have a little half measure full? Mm-hmm. Then that little man in black there, he says women can't have as much rights as men cause. Christ wasn't a woman. Where did your Christ come from? Where did your Christ come from? From God and a woman. Man had nothing to do with Christ being conceived. Mm-hmm. If the first woman God ever made was strong enough to turn the world upside down all by herself, these women together ought to be able to turn it back and get it right side up again. And now they is asking to do it. The men better let them. Obliged to you for hearing me. And now old Sojourner ain't got nothing more to say.
That was a long time ago, but it is so 2025. Mm-hmm. That's all I gotta say. Mm-hmm. Whew, that was a whole word. That was a whole word.
Yeah.
We went to church there for a minute. Mm-hmm. And then we have Ida B. Wells. She was a journalist, an activist, and a truth teller. She documented lynchings when newspapers wouldn't even touch the topic. She co-founded the NAACP and made sure the fight for freedom didn't end until 1865. Mm-hmm. And I just had a thought. Even though this may not have to do specifically with Juneteenth, one of the women in history, Black women in history, that I always think about how much impact she had, especially during civil rights, it's the mom from the kid that was lynched.
Till.
Yeah, Emmett Till's mom. What was her name? I forgot for remember. But yeah, her. Because she had the bravery to show the world the abuses that were happening. Mm-hmm. And the lynchings that were happening and the injustices that were happening, and used her pain mm-hmm. to fight for justice. And even though she didn't find it in the courts, mm-hmm. she found her page in history.
Mm-hmm. She did, because
Mommy?
They were going to close the casket.
Oh, I understand why. I saw the picture.
And she said no.
No. Mommy?
Let them see what they... Mamie?
Mamie Till, I think it was. Uh-huh. Yeah.
They were gonna close the casket, and she said, "No, leave it open. Let them see what they did to my baby."
Mm-hmm.
So let them see meant let our people see who did not do it,
Right.
but also let the people who did do it.
His picture was in the paper. Everybody was able to see.
Everybody was able to see because they took a picture of him in the casket.
Yes. Yes. I saw the picture. And it's
and he was abused so badly.
Yeah. It was almost recognizable.
He was unrecognizable.
Yeah.
So badly over a lie.
Right.
Over a lie.
Mm-hmm.
Our tongues have the power of life and death.
Mm-hmm.
Our tongues have the power to speak truth.
Mm-hmm.
And also to speak lies. Mm-hmm. And lies are what killed this baby.
Yeah.
Lies killed.
Whew. Good Lord.
I knew this was not going to be easy.
No.
But I know it's necessary.
Yeah.
It's necessary.
And in 2025, in the United States, because Juneteenth is from the United States, where the climate is so hot, where people are so divided, where people are still fighting for the rights. And now some of the rights that had been attained are either gone or in danger.
Mm-hmm.
Where you see what is called the 92 percenters, which is the Black women who fought last year to have a better future. And here we are. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Today, Juneteenth is a celebration. But guess what these heroes gave us? It was more than liberation. They gave us a template for resistance.
Yes.
For resilience.
Yes.
For righteous rage and radical hope.
Yes. And they show us that Black freedom, it wasn't handed to us.
No.
It was claimed.
Yeah.
It was organized. It was spoken into being and fought for tooth and nail.
Yeah. And like I said, today, Juneteenth is a celebration, but it's also a charge. It's about Black joy, yes, but it's also about Black mental health, about safety, by truth telling.
Celebrating Juneteenth isn't just cookouts and red drinks. It's about storytelling, educating kids, supporting Black businesses, and showing up for the work that's still unfinished.
Freedom came, but the trauma didn't magically disappear. Enslaved people carried deep wounds, and many didn't live long enough to experience real freedom.
But they passed on their strength. They passed on community. They passed on resilience. That's what healing looks like. It starts in the memory and continues in the mission.
We did talk, I think it was last year, precisely for Juneteenth, about part of the issue of mental health within slavery and how it has passed on throughout generations. Obviously there was no talk of mental health for anybody back in those days, but you can think about PTSD. You can talk about all the sexual abuse and all the horrible things that happen. And when you get into that conversation and you think about people nowadays saying, I didn't do it, get over it. How can I get over it? Okay, I didn't get lashes, but it may have happened to my great grandmother or my great great grandmother. Somebody in my lineage went through that. Somebody who, we are not that many generations away from this. And so how can I get over? And I'm not saying don't forgive and don't move on, but at the same time, here's how I feel about that. I beat you up and then I tell you to get over it. You know what I'm saying? Get over it coming from the ancestors from the people whose ancestor did it, you didn't do it, but you're the one telling me to get over it. Yeah, you didn't do it. It's true. And you didn't do it specifically to me, but it was done to the people behind me, people who are related to me, people whose DNA I carry, people who, in their, I can't say wisdom, but in their fears, taught us to be careful and be protected. And even though things have changed, they haven't changed that much.
And never forget.
Right.
That these words, never forget, have come down through the generations.
Right.
Never forget. If we stop talking about it,
oh yeah, it goes down.
It's gonna fade away.
And it is, because you have to remember when we were doing Black History Month in February this year, we were talking to a 19-year-old, a 13-year-old, and a 4-year-old probably by then. They don't know. When we told, we were speaking about slavery and things that happened, I remember the 19-year-old looking at, the 13-year-old, I wouldn't let them do that to me. Do you think you had a choice? Do you think you could even talk back? It's not letting your whole head spin, 3 times in a row. Do you think you could even look at your masters in the eye? Even after the liberation, Black people had to look down when a white person was walking. You were not free to marry who you wanted. And we're not talking about sexuality. If you were a Black person trying to marry a white person, that was terrible. And you couldn't even drink the same fountain or use the same bathroom. I remember that scene from the movie where the boss goes and says, why are you taking so long every time you go to the bathroom? Because there's no Black bathrooms in this building. I have to go 3 buildings down the road. And it's like, that's not easy to get over, even if you didn't experience it, because you're part of that culture. Like I said, those were your ancestors. If somebody hurt my mom, they hurt me. Somebody hurt my grandma, they hurt me. I can forgive and we can work on a better relationship, but you can't tell me to get over the pain that my people suffered.
Yeah. I wasn't there.
Right?
But I feel it.
And full disclosure, I'm Hispanic, but I'm Afro-Hispanic. There's Black in me, and we were slaves too in Puerto Rico. We had slaves too. We were colonized the same way, where the indigenous were kicked out of the way, and then it became a mixture of white, in that case was the Spaniards, with Black Africans that were brought, and the indigenous, and those mixtures were not by love.
No, it was not.
It was not a relationship. It was masters going into the women's quarters,
raping them.
Right. So the story's not too far from it. So when I tell you I understand that pain, I get it.
Yeah.
Hey, my island is still not a country. We're still a colony in 2025. That's all I gotta say. We still have to ask permission because we don't have the same rights as a state does. And I'm not comparing this with Juneteenth and slavery and stuff, but what I'm saying is, our country at some point needs to realize that the greatest country in the world has become the greatest country in the world by doing horrible things to a lot of people. I'm not saying we're not the greatest country in the world, and I'm proud to be an American, the song, but we also have to realize that how we got here. And it was in the backs of a lot of people and a lot of pain.
A lot of pain.
And they don't give credit to those.
Yeah. A lot of people and a lot of pain. And the people that we talked about today, we talked about Frederick Douglass. He was a prominent abolitionist. Okay? A lot of times when people would get free, you would think they would run and keep running. But it wasn't about one person's freedom.
Mm-hmm.
It was about a whole culture
Mm-hmm.
of freedom.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not free if you're not free.
Right.
Until we can all be free.
Mm-hmm.
And we still have a long way to go.
Mm-hmm.
We've come a long way.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, today, there are still people who wish that we were back then.
Absolutely.
And that is sicker than sick.
Well, earlier this year, there were people reaching out to African American people, telling them, get ready to get back into the plantation. This is 2025. And there are people with ignorance in their hearts that are telling Hispanic Americans, get back to your country, which I always tell them, are you sending me to JFK or LaGuardia? But that's a whole different conversation.
JFK or LaGuardia?
Those are the two airports in New York.
One in New York.
Yes, ma'am.
New York City.
Yes, that's why I tell them every time they say that go back to where you came from, I tell them which airport they're going to use, JFK or LaGuardia. Mm-hmm. And here's the thing, and like we were talking about Major General Gordon, if you even become an ally, you get in trouble. Because he lost a whole bunch of stuff just for delivering the news.
Yeah, being an ally to the slave. He was considered a traitor.
He was.
So he was a traitor because he came and told slaves,
you've been free.
You're not slaves anymore, and you've been free for 2.5 years. But because you can't read,
you didn't know.
And because your owners were not going to volunteer
that information, right? Because they were getting labor for free.
Because they were not going to plow their own fields.
Or pay you wages to do it.
And then after the freedom came, there were owners who said, well, you could stay and I'll give you this little piece of land and you work it. And
freedom didn't mean equal rights.
No, it did not.
Because that was a whole nother battle. It didn't mean equal rights.
No.
They couldn't vote. They couldn't, like I said, go into certain places. It was, you're free, but you're kind of free.
Black people did not get the right to vote until a year after I was born. I was born in 1963.
So 1964.
The Voting Rights Act came out in 1964. And then in 1965, the Civil Rights Act. So from 1865 till 1960.
100 years.
100 years. Yeah.
And it was not, you know what, let's give it to you. There was fights, death, incarceration, all kinds of stuff to get that done.
Yeah. And even in 2025, there are people who want it to be done again.
Oh, yeah.
My ancestors did not come over here this color. My ancestors came over this color. So how did I get to be this color, you ask?
Oh, I know how. There's a lot of milk put in the coffee.
When I was growing up, I always wanted to be dark. My grandfather was the color of this shirt. My grandmother was your color. I always wanted to be dark like my granddad. But when people saw me, I'm darker now than I was when I was a young girl. Which meant that I was very, very fair. But I always wished to be dark because I thought it was beautiful. I looked at my granddad's beautiful skin and said, Granddad, I want to look just like you. I want to have your color. I want to have your long eyelashes. I want to be just like you. But when he and my grandmother got together, they had 3 children. And each one of them was a different shade. And then they had children, and each one of us was a different shade. There were no 2 same shade people.
Yeah.
Like there's no 2 snowflakes. Every snowflake has its own shape.
Absolutely.
Every Black person has their own color.
Yeah.
Has their own shade.
And it's you're saying that, and it's funny because sometimes I didn't know much about this until I moved here. Uh, the colorism, how people, even within the Black community, were discriminated because either they were lighter or darker. And I remember, and still to this day, sometimes if there's a Black person that is very fair, they tell them you can pass for Mexican. They even don't let them be part of their own Blackness because they're fair skinned. Like I said, I share this with you. Like I said, I'm Hispanic, but I'm Afro Hispanic, and I was told I can't identify as a Black person, even though I'm Afro Hispanic. And when we used to go together with my mom, they thought she was your mom until we opened our mouths. They never associated her with me because she was darker than me, and I was told I can use my Afro Hispanic identity because I'm fair, and the Hispanic part negates my African roots somehow. And that's sad. That's sad, I think, because I think there's more in common than what divides us, and I don't think that. But I get it though, because I get that throughout the history, even within the Black community, people have been treated differently depending on the shade of their skin.
They have,
and that sucks.
And let me just share with you, colorism is a pervasive form of discrimination within the Black community. Involves prejudice or discrimination based on skin tone, favoring individuals with lighter skin tones over those with darker complexion. This phenomenon is deeply rooted into the history of slavery and colonialism, where lighter skin was associated with privilege, power, and proximity to whiteness.
Right.
There were Black people that were so fair, they were able to pass
as white. The white passing. That was the phrase. Yeah.
They were able to pass as white. Unfortunately, colorism in the Black community is real.
Oh, yeah, it is.
I experienced colorism when I was in elementary school, and a girl that was darker than me, but she had no idea. I thought she was beautiful because I wanted to be darker. And she pushed me down a flight of marble steps. And when she was asked, why did you do it? She said, because she looks like she thinks she is better than we are. Not that I said it. Not that I indicated. She looks like she thinks she's better than we are. And that was my first experience with colorism. See, I've never been disrespected by white people. I was disrespected by my own people.
The first time I heard about colorism was during CR. It was somebody talking about how they had been bullied in school. She was on the other spectrum. She was darker. And any girls, or I can't remember if it was girls or boys, but it was in school. Kids that were lighter than her who bullied her for being darker. And she still had that wound of how she had been bullied. Now, again, we're not talking about 1895. We are talking 2010, 2020. You probably in the 90s or 80s. We're talking within this century.
Yeah, it was 1970s when I was in elementary school.
Okay, so that's what I'm saying. This is within this century.
Yeah.
This is recent. This is within your lifetime. The person who shared this with us, she's maybe 5 years younger than me. So this is within her lifetime and my lifetime. And it's hard. And the thing is, people who are, here's my thing. People who are white passing use that to their advantage for safety reasons. Because let's be real, that's what it was. They were, okay, I got a privilege, let me use it. But that didn't make you a better person than the one that was the color of this shirt. Also, true racist people are not going to accept you anyway.
Right. And we were told we didn't even bleed the same blood as white people.
Wow.
Like our blood was green or something.
Nobody was shot or cut their finger in front of you.
A mind will absorb whatever is put in it.
Yeah, whatever they're groomed into. You know, there's a saying in Spanish, and I know you hate when I do translate these things because they say sometimes they don't translate well, but this one might.
She didn't okay this with me, so hey,
You know,
I'm
there's
pretty just as shocked as you.
no. I think I've told you this one before. You know about the whole the white passing and stuff. There were people, well, in Puerto Rico at least, where they were like a white passing and they act like they were white
And better than
anybody. And there was a song that always said, "And where's your grandma? Where's your grandma?" That was it. It's a saying, but it was in a song. Where's your grandma? Because, and actually the song was the story of like a couple that was white, and they would hide the grandma in the back room when the friends came over, so that they didn't see that there were black roots in there. So see, that one wasn't a dangerous, crazy one. And, but it was like, where's your grandma? Yeah. Because if you are white, Irish, German, fine, you might not have when you do the 23andMe. But if you are African American, either if you're white passing, if you're Hispanic, you have all kinds of stuff in there. Because either you got either the French or the Spaniards or the English. One of three. And then you have Africans because slaves were all over Latin America.
Well, my great grandfather on my dad's side was Creole.
My great grandmother on my mom's side was black, but she was French.
So I got Creole, French. Great grandmother was the color of the shirt. Great grandfather was totally opposite. And the different shades of children, grandchildren, great grandchildren, great great grandchildren that came from that.
Yeah. So, you know, not treating people like they're just human beings, that they don't bleed red, that they don't all, you know, eat one spoonful at a time, don't go to the bathroom and get sick. It's something that has always blown my mind.
Yeah, it's a mind blower because Satan is real. And all he wants to do is to dehumanize.
Yes.
Okay? He's about abuse.
Yeah.
The spirit of the devil is not about love.
Oh, no.
It's not about uplifting.
No.
It's not about unity.
No.
It is the opposite of every positive word.
Absolutely.
And unfortunately, there are people that allow, my grandma say, you got devil in you. There are some people that allow that spirit to possess them. I know what color I am. And I had to learn to be proud of the color that I am. But for too many years, I wished that I was another color. We have a chance to be better.
Yes.
We have a chance to embrace each other. Nobody got to pick the color when they were born. No. It didn't go through an assembly line and said, I want this.
There was a color wheel and you did.
Yeah, because if there was a hair texture wheel.
Oh, don't even go there.
Because I have an aunt who is my color and who can cut her hair today in 3 weeks. It'll be back down her back.
Oh, man.
Okay, that's what I call Barbie hair. I wanted that. I felt I needed that.
Yeah.
What about the light eyes?
I mean, I have the nice curls, but this front of here, I need to.
Yes, the African American in her comes out around the front. Right, yeah. That's what we call,
the naps.
Yeah. And I'll look at her sometime and the rest of her hair is like perfect. And then the stuff, girl, you better go lay that stuff down. Let me give you a scarf or a bandana so that you can not only put the product on, but tie it up so it will lay down and stay.
And I wanted my granddaddy's gray.
Well, my grandmother had gray eyes.
I didn't get to pick.
And then they turn hazel. So I used to
Oh.
call her. Remember the mood ring?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I said she had mood eyes.
Mm-hmm.
And her eyes, I mean, you come and see her, they'll be gray, and not today, and then another color tomorrow, gray this minute, and another color in a few minutes.
Yeah.
So I'm like, why couldn't I get her eyes?
Mm-hmm. I wanted my grandma.
Why couldn't I get my aunt's hair?
Yeah.
Okay.
I needed some better hair, even though mine doesn't,
I had to learn to love the skin that I'm in. I had to learn to love it.
And I can say now, especially she's gone. My mom would always try to be more white than she was not. It was not. Because one of the things that was said a lot in my house was, you have to marry lighter than you to improve the race. No, I mean, I'm being honest. That's what I remember I dated a guy, the color of my shirt. And my mother would cringe every time our hands got together, because she said the contrast of your hands between him and you.
Such a big difference. It was such a big.
Well, yeah, because he was Jamaican, so he was this color, and she cringed, and yeah, she always told. And actually, if I think about it, the person she loved more of my relationships was the whitest one, which was the worst one and the one that abuses me the most. But you didn't care. He was white, tall, lighter brown eyes. Yeah, that's the one she loved the most. And but I'm not saying. I mean, she probably was racist, but that's not what I was going for. Again, it's the life experiences. You felt like you were treated better, and she considered our fathers, my brother's father and mine, white. I don't think they were as white as she would think, but compared to her, maybe, because I don't see life that way. But her thing was, you have to give the newer generations a better future, and that's why she kept saying improving the races. It was not about discriminating against the people now. She didn't have a problem with dealing with people of any color or whatever, but her kids needed to be lighter and lighter and lighter, and her generations needed to be lighter, because in her mind, they would have a better chance. And that's a lot of what the colorism thing comes from.
Yeah.
Because society...
Light people were considered better and treated better because they were closer to white.
Right.
I don't care how light I am. I am a Black woman. I am proud of it. I always said, when I was a teenager, I was going to marry a man this color. I
never even care about that part.
Well, see, you didn't have to deal with colorism.
I know, it's true. But it's true.
I'm like, I'm going to marry a man that is as dark as my shirt.
Now that I think you almost did.
My husband, I told him he barely made the color.
Yeah.
Okay.
He's dark chocolate, but he's not black.
He's chocolate, but he is not black. And I told him, you almost didn't make it.
Yeah.
Because I did know this. I wasn't going to marry a light-skinned Black man. I wasn't going to do that because I had daddy issues, and daddy was light-skinned. So I was trying to get away from him every way that I could, especially with the color. And when we were growing up, my brother asked my mother, Mom, why are you and I Black and Veda and Daddy are white? And she had to explain to him about the color spectrum and that was a blessing in our culture, that we could go from one end of the color spectrum to the other.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
But I don't think anybody thought about way back then that we're going to end up being this color.
Well, again, when you keep putting milk in the coffee, it's going to happen. And it was not voluntarily.
Yeah.
But there was milk poured in the coffee.
Yeah.
So it was going to get lighter and lighter.
Yeah. Yeah. And these people who fought for us whether they were light-skinned
Oh, no.
slaves or dark-skinned slaves.
Mm-hmm.
They knew that they were black slaves.
Absolutely.
Black slaves. But when you tell a person something enough, they'll start believing the lie.
Yeah. Yeah.
And our ancestors were told that light skin was better than dark skin. And that was a lie from the pit of hell.
Absolutely.
So today in 2025, Juneteenth is celebrating the whole spectrum of the free slaves, black slaves, not part of the spectrum.
Right.
But the whole spectrum, from the lightest to the darkest.
Yes.
We are a black culture. We are a black race. I love putting African American because that's as close as I'm going to come to African. You know, because at first, are you black or white? Or before then, color. But then the guy, are you black or white? But then when they threw the African American up in there, I'm like, yeah. Yes, I am.
Well, you know, Hispanic is an ethnicity, not a race. So I get asked, are you Hispanic or Latino? The answer is yes. But then they ask me, are you Caucasian, African American, or Asian? I'm African American because I'm not white.
And there's nothing wrong with white
No. But that's not who I am, and that's not what you are.
No.
That's all it is.
But you know what I decided to do? I'm going to treat people the way I want to be treated.
Absolutely.
I want to be respected, whatever color I am. And I want to respect you. And we volunteer, and the people that we work for, is only a few of us in there.
I had to think about, that's right. There's
only a few of us.
Yeah, very few. There's like 4
you
people.
Got them on half and half.
Yeah,
Okay.
4.
And
the kid that's black, but the other Hispanic lady.
You know why I love it?
Yeah.
Because I am showing the people that I'm around, I'm not intimidated by you. We can have a great conversation. Okay? Come in with my personality. That's who I am. You wake me up at 2 a.m. Am I not the same person?
No, not at 2 o'clock in the morning. You'll be barking.
But
yeah, I know what you're saying.
I'm consistent.
Yes, you are.
All right?
Yes, you are.
And the best thing could have happened to me was for me to be educated in a rich white school because my mother was a teacher. And they told us they could bring their children because they needed to integrate. So the black teachers brought their children over, and we got good education, but it also let me know that I'm not afraid to talk to white people. I don't care if you got a Camaro on your 16th birthday. I don't care if your dad is the head of the biggest steel company in the world and he brings you to school, landing on the football field in a helicopter.
I know, I was blown up by that.
In a helicopter, okay? I was around all that. But I still had to get in my mom's car every evening and drive back 30 miles to home in the hood. That's where we lived, in the hood.
You know, and that's the thing that I want to leave out of this episode is 2 things. First, teach your children about history. Because it's said that those who don't learn from history tend to repeat it. And we are in a time in history that we don't want to repeat history. So, and from our experience as homeschoolers, they have no clue. Because I don't know what's taught in schools, and 2 of our students came from school. They had been in school, at least one until 7th grade, the other one until 10th grade, kind of, sort of. And so they went through school. They had all those years of social studies and history and education. They kept, and they were still like, oh? So yes, I'm not telling you to homeschool. I'm saying regardless of what they teach in the private school, public school, wherever your kids are being educated, make sure that you teach them at home the reality of history. And it doesn't have to be just Black history. Teach all history. Because I learned so much this year when we were talking about Mahatma Gandhi and India and all that history and a whole bunch of stuff. And learning is always a gift.
It is.
So, but teach them about history, about the history of the world, about the history of your culture, whatever the culture is, white, Asian, black, Hispanic, it don't matter. Teach it all, because that's going to give a good foundation for a good world citizen in the future. So that's the first thing. Teach the next generation. The second is, let's remember something. In heaven, there are no departments.
No colors.
There's no black hood or the white hood or the Hispanic hood or the Asian hood. We're all going to be partying together.
Mm-hmm.
Let's start treating ourselves like that here.
Heaven can be here on earth.
Right. Well, let's start practicing exactly that relationship of sisterhood and brotherhood in here. With our neighbors, with our coworkers, with people in school, with strangers.
Strangers.
Right.
What do I do in public?
Yeah, you do too much. I say hello and goodbye. She has a whole conversation. I ain't got time for all that. But you do. She does, and that's great.
But the thing is, I'm not just talking. People are talking back.
Oh, yes, she has a whole conversation. That is absolutely true. That's why I keep grocery shopping while she does her thing. We are different, but guess what? We love each other.
But she has come out a whole lot in the past few years. At one time, she didn't talk to anybody. Okay, and then she would tell me, "A guy,
I am an introvert that looks like an extrovert. That's my issue."
Get so bold, and then I didn't think of it as boldness. I thought of it as I'm used to being around other cultures of people, so it doesn't make me nervous.
Nothing to do with culture. It's just I don't care what color or type or I just didn't care. I don't care what culture.
That feel more comfortable.
Oh yeah, with their folks,
to their own people.
Yeah.
Than to talk to other cultures. People are people.
That's me.
We have different thoughts. We have different
beliefs. Okay.
But people are people.
Absolutely.
And it took a long time to realize if you cut a white person, they will bleed red, just like if you cut a black person, they will bleed red.
Yeah.
There were people that did not want blood transfusion. They didn't want black blood in their body.
That is still happening
today.
Because there was in the news not too long ago about someone who didn't want a black surgeon to save their lives. They were a better Christian than I am. I'm going to say it. Because
that's why I'm not a doctor. So don't be like, baby, you gonna die.
Oh, no, that's what about me. That's why I said they were a better Christian than I am. Because they were like, you don't want to sign here and tell me that you didn't want to. God bless you and have a good day and go tell Jesus I said hi. Or whoever you're going to see. I got nothing to do with that. But, that doctor fought to be able to do that surgery and save their life. So that's why I said they're Christian than I am. I would have been like, hey, I tried. And I would say, I'll give you all my credentials and I can do your surgery and save your life.
Yeah, back at Charles Drew.
I'm talking, this was like a month ago.
I know.
This was not.
But back in the day, the man that created separating blood and plasma, he died because they would not let him go into the hospital. Okay? Because they would not take care of him as a patient. He died.
Because he was black?
Yes.
Oh, Lord.
Because he was black. Okay? People.
Yeah.
Time is winding down.
Oh, yeah.
And this earth is not going to be here forever.
No.
Okay?
And if you read Revelations,
we need to change our
signs are coming.
We need to change.
Yeah.
And we, meaning everybody.
Oh, yeah.
We need to change our thought pattern. We need to change the way we're thinking. We need to appreciate life.
Yeah.
In whatever shade it comes in.
Yeah.
Appreciate life. Okay? Now, there are some people out here, no matter what color they are, they're going to be crazy.
See, but here's the thing. Judge someone by their character, not the color of their skin. That's a difference. You can love everybody and love some people from a 10-foot pole because they're not good for you, or like you say, they're crazy. Mm-hmm. But when you do the list of why you hang out with someone, color should not be on even on the paper. You know, race should not be on the paper. You know, nation of origin should not be on the paper. Now, you're a predator? That's on the paper. You're a devil worshiper? That's on the paper. You know? Mm-hmm. I may not agree with your religion. I don't stop talking to someone just because they're not a Christian. That's ridiculous. You know, I may not go to your service or whatever you do. Right. But I would not, if I'm serving anything, food or customer service or shoot in the supermarket, mm-hmm. I'm not going to stop talking to you and treat you with decency because you're dressed differently, or I can tell, or you tell me that you're from a different religion. Because that's not what's supposed to be.
That's not what it's about.
That is not what it's about.
That is not what it's about.
That's my point. So, country of origin, religion, you can have some boundaries around that, but not necessarily not treat people right just because they believe differently. You know, we have one of my baby's best friend. His family is not Christian. They have their own belief. We were on an outing, and mom had to go do some prayers in the car at a certain time because it was one of their holidays. And I said, I'll have the kids while you go do your thing. That, you know, I treat her with decency. I also tell her, I go to church. No, this day I can't go with you because I have something to do with my church. And she talks about her stuff. I talk about my stuff. And we respect each other, you know. But, you know, you can be considerate, cordial, respectful, even if you have certain things that are not the same. You know, I'm an American, you're an American, but my background culture is different than yours. You laugh at me all the time over things that you're like, you guys do crazy stuff. Yes, we do. That doesn't change the love we have for each other. Then you tell me about stuff that you guys do, and I think, we still love each other. We still do life together.
Yeah, we do.
So, you know, and that's what I'm saying. We need to realize, especially if we are all believers, you know, this is more for the Christians, that that's how we're supposed to live, because that's how it's going to be in heaven. When we get to the presence of the Lord, we're going to get a new body. We don't even know if it's going to be purple or if it's going to be black or if it's going to be just see-through. We don't know, but we're all going to have it.
Yeah.
You know, and it's going to be, Jesus didn't come for this. He came for love, for caring, for, you know, his revolution was love. It was not weapons. That was the problem. People thought that he was going to be a warrior, and he was, but the weapon was different. Mm-hmm. The sword was different.
Well, he said the weapons of our warfare are not carnal.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
They're not carnal.
And there's still people who are in the Old Testament trying to fight with a pew.
And we free. Jesus came. He took all of that so that we can live a better life.
Yeah.
He endured all of that.
Yes.
So that we could live our life more abundantly.
Yeah.
He did that, but there are some people that they choose to stay in the past.
Yes.
And instead of realizing that they're free
mm-hmm.
through Jesus.
And so here's I'm good because we're talking about the end, but we're almost ending. Go recap. Treat each other with decency and respect, regardless of the color of your skin, the country of origin, the language they speak. Teach your children history, real history. And last but not least, let's make sure that we are following the true Christ. Make sure that your beliefs, if you're a Christian, are the biblical values. Sometimes people are taking stuff out of context, and we are in very dangerous days. If you think that being mean to other people is justified by the word of God, you're reading it wrong. If you think that starving people is correct, that's not the word of God. If you think that being abusive is righteous, that's not the word of God. If you think that God is only over the United States, that is not God, because the United States is not in the Bible. God is worldwide, and it applies to the Chinese Christian, to the Russian Christian, to the Turkish Christian, to the American Christian in South Dakota, to the one in Mexico, to the one in Cuba, to the one in Africa. It's one God. That's what we believe. So
I want to
be mindful of that.
I want to leave you with a question. Are you a Frederick Douglass? Are you someone that's going to fight for others?
Mm-hmm.
Are you a Gordon, escaped from slavery, but still have the scars to show where you came from? Are you a Major General Gordon Granger of another ethnicity, of another culture, but couldn't wait to get there to let us know that we were free?
Mm-hmm.
Are you Harriet Tubman, free but go back
to free some more,
to free others? I think she freed
so many,
100 plus people. Are you Sojourner Truth, a women's rights activist? Ain't I a woman? Ida B. Wells, co-founder of the NAACP,
fighting for rights.
Let this day inspire us to honor who came before us and elevate those who continue to fight. And recommit to building a future rooted in freedom, equality, and hope for all, not just for some.
Well, thank you for listening to Thrive by the Rising Muse. If today moved you, share a review, share the episode, tell someone what you learned, follow us on social media. Remember that we are trying to get to 1,000 followers on YouTube, and that we are at the Rising Muse on all platforms. And remember that if you're experiencing a mental health crisis, please dial 988. Or if a loved one is in middle of a crisis, please dial 911 or take them to the nearest emergency room.
And if you are in a domestic violence situation and need help, call 800-799-7233 or text 887-888. Please make sure you're in a safe place when you're reaching out for help.
We see you, we hear you, and we're walking with you.
And don't forget to thrive.
Happy Juneteenth. Bye-bye.